The most worthless SUVs in 2026. Reliability problems, quality issues. Here's 15 of the worst, most useless SUVs for 2026. Let's get into it now. Life's too short to drive boring cars. Starting from the bad and work our way to the worst, we talk about the SUVs that clearly will be virtually worthless in 26, and it starts with the Buick Enclave. Unfortunately for them, they've done a recent reswitch where they went from a V6 engine that many customers actually trusted and enjoyed to now they switch it up to a turbocharged 2.5 liter.
Brother,
An engine that's far too small, slightly economical, but way too little engine for a 3-seat SUV. The challenges with drivability issues, transmission issues, glitchiness with a lot of the electronics. On top of it, there was a stop-sell order for a period of time for GM. To make matters worse, the Buick Enclave, let's be honest, look at this thing. It's not much more than a rental car special. Due to these rental car influx and a lot of these rental car companies buying up a lot of these vehicles, after a couple of years and they've used them up, they've flooded the used car market, and that's ultimately resulted in way too many. The inventory is way too high and the customers had way too much pick of the litter. When there's too much supply, what does that mean for pricing? In the toilet. And that's exactly what's happened, because unfortunately in about 3 years, the Buick Enclave loses about 50% of its original value. From about $50,000, now you can't even sell them for 25 grand in the auction. They're not even able to give them away, and as a result, a lot of people look at a Buick or a Chevy or a GM and think they're all rebadged. It's all essentially the same vehicle. Why would I buy a Buick when I can just buy a Chevy and save myself tens of thousands of dollars? So as a result, the Buick Enclave, with electronic issues, transmission, mechanical problems, and just the overall reputation of being a gray-haired special, means that nobody's buying them. Therefore, the prices are in the toilet. The next vehicle, unfortunately, on my list is the Infiniti QX80. Sadly enough, it suffers from brand identity and the fact that it's trying to outsell the others when the others are luxury cars, and the Infiniti QX80 is struggling. As Infiniti is a luxury car brand, the sad reality is the close association with Nissan and the fact that nobody's buying Nissan means that you can't sell a Nissan or Infiniti product without heavy incentives. So who's buying them? And those that are probably now suffering the wrath of heavy depreciation. Because according to Car Edge, what we're seeing is in 3 years, the average Infiniti QX80 is losing as much as 51.3% of its original value. Sadly, a lot of the problems stem from the fact that the old naturally aspirated V8 is gone, and now they've thus replaced it with a twin turbo 3.5 liter V6, which in itself isn't that bad, but it feels a little undersized for the sheer magnitude and mass and girth of such a massive SUV like the QX80. A lot of the technology lacks tactile feel. There's a lot of problems with electronics and glitches. The vibrating seats, very weak. All of the electronics just seem to lack consistency, durability. It doesn't feel as refined as a lot of the competition. And most people are saying, look, if I'm going to buy an SUV and a luxury SUV, I'm probably going to go to Lexus if I'm looking for a Japanese brand, or I'll just go with the Cadillac Escalade. Because with clunky door handles, freezing radios, and strange noises coming from all over the place, it begs the question, where's the refinement? And as a new vehicle, people are taking a chance. But once they hit warranties gone, bye-bye after 3 years, people are less susceptible to taking that chance. A huge risk in finding and buying into something that's newly redesigned, and durability is always up in the air with a Nissan Infiniti product. Sadly enough, this is one of the biggest losers, and if you've owned one for 3 years, you're probably feeling the pain. The next big worthless SUV, unfortunately, is a redesign. We're talking about the Nissan Murano. We know durability has been a challenge for years. The CVT transmission has been a cause and a butt of many jokes for Nissan, with the Jatco causing them thousands of unhappy customers. Unfortunately, that reputation continues to carry on, even though they've now switched to a 9-speed automatic transmission. The drawback now, though, however, is where they had a V6, they've now gone to a 2-liter turbo variable compression engine. So where they make one win on the transmission, they make another loss on the engine, because the variable compression engine is now also part of a long-standing class action suit. Of course, there's a recall related to these engines catastrophically failing. Variable compression engine? What's wrong with a standard connecting rod? Nissan's been challenged with lower quality products, issues with durability and reliability enough to choke a horse.
Not to worry. We have the latest Heimlich machine.
people are running from these vehicles. The worst part is, a big issue with Nissan and Infiniti in the last few years is they haven't been able to sell a lot of products. If people are looking for products in that marketplace, they're probably looking for a Honda Pilot, a Honda CR-V, maybe a Toyota RAV4, or even a Highlander. There's lots of great choices and lots of amazing competition. But the problem is Nissan doesn't have durability dialed in, and their pricing regime is pretty much on par with the competition. The problem is the competition's far too durable. And so a big problem with this is the heavy incentives that are getting tagged to a lot of these new Muranos. Because of the sales, because of the durability and reliability issues, Nissan's found themselves having to hit you up with some big incentives. And in doing that, there's one customer that noted they paid $47,000 brand new for their vehicle, only to find out a year later on a trade-in time, they were only going to get 32 grand. Heavy depreciation to the tune of 50 to 55% in as matter as 3 quick years. It's a sad state of affairs. And sure, while there's been some enhancement and some improvements, the fact is a heavily incentivized vehicle, once it hits the used car market, is absolutely decimating the used car values. So if you're looking and trying to resell and get your money out of your car, forget it. It's not going to happen. The next sad SUV that's losing value at an alarming rate to the tune of 52.2% of its original value in 3 short years. It's also had 15 recalls in the course of the last handful of years. It's also been one of the most marked up vehicles in the last 3 to 4 years because of the shortages, and Stellantis took sheer advantage of that. And it's also been recognized as one of the most unreliable SUVs based on consumers' reports, and we're talking about the Jeep Grand Cherokee. Now, I speak to that because I actually have relatives that had one. The warranty ran out 3.5 years after they owned it. The engine blew up. Sadly, they're distraught. They've had to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to get the vehicle repaired, but this is just a typical tip of the iceberg for Jeep Grand Cherokee owners. Have you heard about the latest 4xe? Over-the-air updates, bricked their vehicles. Sadly, a lot of those vehicles got marching orders to park their vehicles outdoors, risk of fire because of their plug-in hybrids had problems, and a lot of these vehicles would potentially just shut down or stop running altogether. We can't forget about a lot of the electrical gremlins and a lot of the issues with all of the infotainment, electronic components. Means these vehicles are always just a drive away and an ignition start away from the next catastrophic check engine light. But to make matters worse, because the prices were marked up so high and there was even market adjustment fees for the last few years on a lot of these vehicles, customers were willing to pay it. Stellantis kept jacking prices up. And what do you think happens when you overpay for a vehicle brand new? It has a much further distance to fall. Therefore, a lot of these vehicles fell so far, people were losing as much as $30,000 in a few short years. And as a result, they were virtually worthless come 2026. Next SUV is another one that unfortunately suffers from the Nissan problems, and that's a lot of times the reputation that just keeps hanging around like a bad rash. Go get the cream, you put it on, it doesn't quite go away. It starts to clear up, but it doesn't quite go away altogether. This is the unfortunate reality of a lot of Nissan owners, and the Nissan Armada is such vehicle. It's a large, oversized SUV that now they've gone and replaced the V8 engine and put that 3.5 liter twin turbo V6, the same thing you're going to find in the Infiniti QX80. A lot of customers have been complaining by Nissan app or Apple CarPlay or connectivity to your phone being challenging. Backup cameras, infotainment challenges, electronics every which way from Sunday becoming some sort of a source of a problem. On top of it, hesitation. There's been complaints about some of the transmissions sometimes hesitating. Little turbo lag. People are just not necessarily overly inspired, especially people coming from the V8 engine, and owners now driving these new 3.5 V6s are scratching their head wondering, wow, what's going to happen next? At 54% value loss in 3 short years means this is almost worthless come 2026. And even with a Repair Pal rating of 3.5 out of 5, the reliability is actually reasonable for a vehicle of this magnitude. The problem is it's suffering from the stigma that a lot of Nissan products have in the last 5 to 10 years. The next vehicle, another Stellantis product. We know what the theme is there. High prices over MSRP, and this is what's catching a lot of these owners now by surprise when they find out on trade-in value how little their Grand Wagoneers and Wagoneers are worth. A Wagoneer, 2025, started say at $90,000. After a few short years, you're looking at a loss of about 54% or to the tune of about $40,000. Poof! up in smoke. And unfortunately, a lot of that comes because of the new engine. You have this Hurricane twin turbo inline 6, 420 horse, or the high output version of about 540 horsepower. And sure, while it's got a 10,000 pound towing capacity, the quality challenges are real. A lot of people have complained about panel gaps and fitment issues, paint related problems, clunking, squeaking, plastics coming apart, just an overall trash bag feel. And a lot of customers, when they own it for a period of time, they start to get the squeaks and the rattles and they recognize that, wow, this vehicle's not worth this money. But unfortunately, things get out, reputations get out, and people are starting to see that 3 years old and beyond, or even a year old, 2 years old, somebody coming along in a secondary market realizing that these vehicles simply are not worth it. And sadly, another one that I'm surprised isn't actually even lower on our list is a product from the JLR group. And everybody knows that the premium luxury vehicles quite often take the biggest hit, along with a lot of EVs. But guess what? The Range Rover itself has been known to lose as much as 55.5% in 3 short years. Most people just run, they panic, they hide. When 3 years of ownership comes up, they realize that, no, I don't want any part of that. While it's under warranty, it's a lot of fun when it's running. And many people recognize that infotainment system problems. I had that on a Jaguar I owned many years ago as well. The infotainment system and sometimes the SIM card, it just crashes. Electronics, gremlins, transmission problems. We've heard of leaky and low hydraulic pressure in some, sometimes carbon fouling, O2 sensor issues, and just a sheer magnitude of repairs means that you're losing 55 and more % of its value in a few short years. Yes, like they say, you want to pay to play? Range Rover is definitely the foundation of that. Thanks so much for all the new members supporting the channel. If you want your own emoji, priority questions, and sneak peek of a new video, or you just want to support the channel, be sure to hit down there, hit that link. That's going to do all the work for you. Thanks again so much, everybody. The next model, another fine product by the JLR group, is actually surprising because it was supposed to stop production and stop sales in 2025. And lo and behold, here we are in 2026, and you can still find for sale Jaguar F-Paces. Did you realize the F-Pace is pretty much the only Jaguar left on the market other than the I-Pace? Because Jaguar was trying to rebrand themselves. They were trying to push themselves into a pure electric vehicle market. Well, that didn't work all that well, and especially upon the rebrand, they came up with all kinds of flashy colors and tried to be political. Next thing you know, that absolutely destroyed and decimated the brand. They came from a time when they had great vehicles like the XJL and the F-Types, but now all of a sudden they have these weird, quinky SUVs, and that's all they have left. They actually stopped production last year, and they're just trying to ride out and sell what they have left on the floor. But unfortunately, at 55.7% depreciation in a few short years means that you're going to look at an average of $30,000 loss in a few years. Try to trade that in for your next BMW or Audi. Good luck with that. A big part of the problem with Jaguar is, where do you get the parts? Once these are all obsolete, who's going to service this car? Where are you going to buy the parts for it? What's the future look like for the brand? So it's not really shocking when you hear people are shying away from the brand and they'd rather not buy them on the used car market. Sure, when they're brand new, they take a chance with the big enough incentives. It might be worth buying for a couple of years or take it up on a lease. But that's why the depreciation crushes them so bad. We can't forget about some of the durability issues, and Jaguar is not as bad as many let it out to be. As a matter of fact, I would put them toe to toe with any product from Mercedes or Audi. The problem is infotainment problems. The ZF 8-speed has been fairly durable, but on top of it, they've had O2 sensors, water pump, cracked Y pipes on some of their V6 and V8 engines. They've had their issues. Short drive shafts, bolts too short. A lot of people just don't want to take the chance. It's simply not worth it. And as a result, massive losses to the point where these vehicles are almost worthless in 2026 because nobody's buying them used. Another one, fine Stellantis product, is the Dodge Durango. And let's be honest, I had a Durango way back in early 2000s, and they were a great product. They were more like a truck. Now they've transitioned to feels like more like a minivan, although they are an SUV. The point is they're becoming way too long in the tooth. At a 58.8% depreciation in a few short years, it's no shocker when we hear, even though you've got a V8 power, even though you've got towing capacity, it's just too old and dated. There's way too many great products on the market, and people are just getting tired and bored of it. The prices are too high, starting at $62,000. You can expect to lose $25,000, $30,000 and even more in a couple of quick years. These vehicles are not selling well, and sales are showing it. The Durango was one of the few actually keeping Dodge together. together. Why? Well, Dodge doesn't have much other than the Hornet and the Durango, and ultimately what we're starting to see is a shriveling marketplace between the Dodge, the Chrysler, which has one van, and of course, unfortunately, the rest of the Stellantis products resulting from Ram sales. But the Dodge just not selling all that well, and those that do buy them are seeing a massive depreciation, a lot of it durability issues. We've heard of problems with manifold bolts, durability with electronics, the engines that they've put in from time to time have shown their age as well. The fuel consumption just not there, and people are just getting bored. Not to mention that the fact that these vehicles clearly are not worth what they're going for on the new market, thus pushing down the used car market drastically. And the next one, unfortunately, is another Dodge product, and essentially a rebadged Alfa Romeo Tonale, which is called the Dodge Hornet, sadly was overpriced to begin with. The durability challenges were there, but most importantly, it was being sold under a muscle car brand like Dodge, which should be muscular, but it just wasn't really like that. It was trying to compete with the brands like the RAV4 and the CR-V, and yet it had the Euro flavor and it was a fun vehicle, but the prices were simply too high. So high, in fact, that at the end of 2025, they had to start prioritizing these sales and start to incentivize as much as $15,000 off. They're still starting to see depreciation rates of 58.8% based on Car Edge stats, so the Dodge Hornet is mixed in with the Durango as well as a Charger Challenger. Within that marketplace, it clearly doesn't necessarily slot in there. It would be better sold under another type of brand, but the pricing needs to be reevaluated because as it stands, paying as much as you do brand new for these vehicles, it's inevitable that the used car market, who doesn't love them to begin with, is starting to see massive depreciation, so original owners are really feeling the burn. The next one is basically the baby brother to the Dodge Hornet, and we're talking about the Alfa Romeo Tonale, which we just spoke of. It's a beautiful, spicy little SUV. It's fun. I've driven them. They're great. But unfortunately, the pricing doesn't necessarily align. And we're seeing the average depreciation in 3 years of these vehicles being close to 60.6%. That's pain. That's right. That's about $28,000 gone out of a vehicle that started at $46,000 price tag to begin with. And unfortunately, in 2025, there was only about 3,383 sold nationwide of the Alfa Romeo Tonale. Now, sadly, there was a few contributing factors. Some of it is dealer network accessibility. And of course, if you're looking on a used market, unless you live within a city of 1 million people, you probably don't have a dealer network in your city, and you've probably got to travel. That's one concern. And while that isolates a big part of the buying market. Unfortunately, other issues with battery drawn, electronic glitches, there have been some transmission issues, but largely it's not that unreliable. As a matter of fact, the overall durability is on par with just about anything these days that's technical, direct injected with turbochargers. The unfortunate reality is people fear the worst. And the worst is, of course, expensive repairs. The next one is another Alfa Romeo product, and because they depreciate so heavily, I might find myself going shopping for a used Quadrifoglio. I love these vehicles. The Alfa Romeo Stelvio is the next vehicle in line. Sadly for the original owners, 60.6% depreciation is the average over a 3-year time frame. Again, do you have a market network in your area? Do you have a way to maintain these and service these vehicles? If you don't, it's going to be a challenge. That being said, I love these vehicles. They're fun. I've driven them, and I would honestly put these up against anything German at this point. People are finding that they're expensive to maintain. Parts availability is a little bit reduced. They're just not appreciated on the used car market, as the used car market is brutal. When we're talking about a $29,000 loss on a $49,000 vehicle that's stickered new, it means it's very painful. Now, I love these vehicles. Like I said, I think I'm going to go shopping, have a look around because there's such great deal on the used car market. Just know that either you turn your own wrench, you're a great DIYer, or you have a great network very nearby your house. The next big painful vehicle to own is one, unfortunately, you've got to be as rich as the King and Queen of England if you want to drive. I don't know how car manufacturers create a product where wires can leak oil or where cooling systems find every single hole and pour themselves on the ground. Because unfortunately, with bad transmissions and leaky air ride suspension problems and body parts that fall off inside, that's right, the full-size Range Rover is one of those vehicles that suffers an absolute catastrophic level of depreciation to the tune of 68-69% of its value gone in 3 short years. On top of it, there's been many customers complain that they've lost as much as $70,000 in 3 years. How does that work? Most people that get into Range Rovers do so under the pretense of a lease. For 2 to 3 years, lease it, make your payments, enjoy it, feel like the king and queen of England, spend your tens of thousands of dollars and say bye-bye and never have to deal with the repairs or the expensive maintenance and service results. Because unfortunately, that's what you're in for. Huge expensive parts on a $250 an hour shop rate. And on top of it, when you're dealing with just basic maintenance costing you $2,500 to $3,000 per year, it's no wonder people run for the hills after maintenance and warranty period is up. They're scared crapless. And so as a result, these vehicles shed a ton of money and are worth just handing it over and just giving the keys back after 3 years and when the lease runs out. Definitely, with all of that said, be sure to check right there, my favorite for the most reliable vehicles you can buy. And if you want something, you want to know the only Lexus vehicles I would buy, right there. You won't lose your shirt. They're reliable and they'll last forever. Hope to see each and every one of you real soon, everyone. See you then. Bye-bye.